Home Truths is a creative advocacy campaign for sustainability and several environmental issues that we constantly notice around us. And we've been running this campaign from the last weekend, and we've had some very exciting sessions with some great inputs from our audiences. And I'm very happy to finally reach this weekend when we have two performance sessions to which I've obviously been looking forward to. And our first one today, of which we are all part of right now, and I'm going to again mute people. Okay. So the session now is called Where Do We Come From? Where Do We Go? I'm sure that is one question we've asked each other at some point in our lives, but of course, very philosophically. But today, I think we'll be talking a little more practically as well about this issue. And the question in focus today is the closed loop, which Vikram will explain later in a little more detail. And how do these wonderful dancers that we have as guests today in the show tackle this question, not only as artists, but also as humans, at the start of a journey where they probably start to look at this issue of sustainability a little closely. So I'm very happy to welcome our two guests for today, Avantika Bahl, who is a contemporary dance maker from Mumbai, and Debashree Bhattacharya, a Kathak practitioner and teacher from Kolkata. Both I've known for a very long time, and I'm very happy to have them here today. And of course, co-conspirator Vikram Iyengar from the Pickle factory, who's a connector, arts manager. I don't know what all roles he takes as and when is needed. All I know that we usually end up together in a lot of places. So, and that's always good because I think we tend to add to this ecosystem, which I think is very crucial that we have. Before we start the session, I want to quickly introduce our partners. So obviously it's Arts Forward who's been doing this campaign. And I also want to thank our co-curator, Calcutta Art and Flea, who are a young creative incubator full of these bubbly, energetic young women who are doing a great job of connecting young business owners who are dabbling in the sustainable businesses and to bring them to their audiences closer. Our partner and a long-time partner is also Karo Sambhav, who are India's first producer responsibility organization. They help in actually closing material loops. They deal in plastic and electronic waste, and they can really help you if you wish to recycle your waste in the correct manner. All links to their work and the collection centers are in the chat box. Please feel free to read more and learn more about how in very small ways you can make a difference. I will now hand over to Vikram, and yes, all the best.
Thanks, Paramita. As usual, Arts Forward and with Paramita at the helm has offered us another delightful buffet of experiences, this time with sustainability and environmental consciousness and awareness at its core. Even though this may be one of the first, it's not, I think Paramita and Arts Forward have done things with an environmental focus before. But I know that for Paramita as a person, the environment and the arts, the connection between the environment and the arts, and therefore between environment and the larger question of how we live our lives has always been something that she's very, very, very keenly focused on and concerned about. So basically how this is going to run is both Debashree and Avantika have responded through short films in a very short space of time. So that's the first sort of applause we have to give them for really creating two wonderful, beautiful pieces of work in a very short space of time. What I'm going to do to introduce the closed loop cycle is actually read a little extract of an article that Paramita had shared with us when she began talking about this idea with us. And this is the impulse that was given to Debashree and Avantika, and to which they've responded. So here goes. And Shivani will put the link to the whole article in the chat so you can look at it at your leisure. The buzz phrase closed loop cycle has been popping up more and more in mainstream culture, and it pleases me to no end. Why? The more we become aware of this concept, the faster we can live more sustainably, room by room in our homes, and then ultimately work towards curbing climate change. This is because the principles behind closed loop cycles are inherently better for our health, the Earth's well being, and keep us more connected to our local ecosystems. In nature, there are closed loop cycles within every niche of an ecosystem. A closed loop cycle is a system where nothing is wasted, only returned to the cycle itself to sustain and further strengthen it. The most basic understanding of what a closed loop cycle does in an ecosystem is decomposition. Another wonderful example is the closed loop cycle of oxygen and carbon dioxide between plants and animals. When you start to look for closed loop cycles in nature, you find them everywhere. The closed loop cycle in nature is balanced, it wastes nothing, and in turn makes the cycle resilient. Life on Earth was created and sustained within closed loop cycles. Think of it as our default mode. Everything that an organism takes over its lifetime is ultimately returned to the earth to sustain the cycle indefinitely. Without this law of return, we wouldn't have soil to grow our food with, nor would we have oxygen to breathe. The closed loop cycle perspective allows us to see our actions and habits within our homes as part of a whole. So that's the impulse that Paramita sent to both these artists. And without further ado, I think we'll go into the films. First, we'll watch Debashree's film and then Avantika's film. And then we'll invite both artists into a conversation. Just a bit of housekeeping. I'd ask, while the films are being screened, I'd ask all of us, including Arts Forward and the artists, to keep our videos off, keep ourselves on mute. And once we come back, you're free to switch your videos on, but please keep yourselves on mute so that we can avoid any noise interference. Thank you. Enjoy.
One, two, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. Tha tit tha tit ta tit 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 tha. Anchor. Support. Strength. Stability. Balance. Balance. Harmony. Harmony. Balance. Harmony. Need. Want. More. All. Need. Want. More. All. Need. Want. More. All. make, use, throw, 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 make, use, throw. Refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, rot. Refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, rot.
No, they whisper. You own nothing. You were a visitor, time after time, climbing the hill, planting the flag, proclaiming. We never belonged to you. We never belonged to you. You never found us. It was always the other way round.
when despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be. I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free.
Thank you both Avantika and Debashree for those really wonderful responses. Very beautiful, very creative. I mean, we can talk about those films for a long time, but that's not what we're here to do, unfortunately. Um, I would sort of just say that two of the things that really interested me, the fact that both of you were playing between um, interior and exterior spaces, and the exterior space was always a more natural space rather than an urban space, even though one is in Calcutta and one is in Bombay, and urban space is all around you. And the fact that you both chose to end with some really beautiful and very powerful texts. And the first one, which talks about basically uh, the earth never being ours to own, and then conversely, or maybe even parallelly, the second one talking about the grace that the world offers us. I think those are both very powerful finishing thoughts from both films. But I don't want to talk anymore. I'd like to really invite both of you to respond to just a couple of questions that I have, and then hopefully we'll have time for to respond to a few questions from the people who are with us, the audience who's with us. So any questions that anyone who's attending has, just please put them in the chat and we can pick them up from there. So firstly, Debashree, Avantika, I'd like you to talk a little bit about your film. What were your responses to the idea? A little bit about the challenges you faced in making the film, because we're both of you are functioning under lockdown conditions or semi-lockdown conditions. And what were the central ideas that you worked on, both in terms of content and form? So who would like to go first? Short answers to what can, of course, be a very long one, but Debashree, do you want to start? You're on mute.
Oh, so sorry. Yeah. So first of all, I'd like to thank Arts Forward, Paramita Shaha, Pickle Factory for having me here. Thank you so very much. I mean, my days uh, were like indistinguishable. Yes. And now I can distinguish. Yes. So thank you so much for this. So when I started doing research, I was like very much disturbed because I found this conflict, this dichotomy between the artist Debashree, who is again mindless and mindful, and the human Debashree, who is again mindless and mindful. So I was looking at this, the importance of closed loop cycle in nature. And so what is this closed loop cycle? What is it given us? It has its own regularity, it has its own consistency, it has its own rhythm, it has its own tune, and it serves as an anchor. On the other hand, as a Kathak artists, so we work around this time cycle, rhythmic cycle, and we try and follow that rhythmic cycle, and that rhythmic cycle again acts as an anchor to us. We all, whatever rhythmic variations we do, whatever performance we do, we try to stick to that rhythmic cycle, and we don't go out of that. If we break that cycle, we go off beat and there is chaos. So as a performer, so I am very much aware, I'm very much conscious, I'm very much alert that I will not break that cycle and I will not go off beat. So as I was choreographing, as I was beautifully trying to show the closed loop cycle through double hand gestures with so much care. So, it was like every time I was thinking, what is it that, I am not doing as a human being? What is it that doesn't matter? So as human being, I'm breaking that closed loop cycle of nature every time. Yeah. So why it doesn't matter? Why am I not conscious when I'm so much conscious as an artist, but why I'm not so much conscious, not so much aware uh, as a human being? And also, when I started this choreography, I started asking a few questions, very basic questions. So who are we as humans? Who are we as civilizations? What is our connection to nature? So the first thing, I had as an image was my childhood. My first connection to nature was, like painting nature, trees, rivers, mountains, birds, uh, and like, uh, talking to trees. You must have seen, so that is my student Brishti. She was in the first section where it was impressions. I was, taking a journey down memory lane, taking a journey to my childhood. So, she was interacting. So that's her connection. So that was my connection with nature. So when I was a child, but as I grew up, what happened? So when I looked at around me, like the chair I am sitting in, and the cupboard there, the bed there. So now as I grow up, so that is my connection with nature. That bed, this chair, this book rack here. So, so it was very stirring. It was, and so this is simultaneously, as as I was also, this closed loop cycle, it's maintaining balance. So it is the anchor. So as a dancer, when I'm holding my body, so I go back to the principles of Kathak, the Kathak body principles. So how do I stand? How do I hold my body? From where do I get my energy? From where do I get the strength, the core? So that is the balance. Yeah. So, and again, and as an artist, I'm practicing this for the past 35 years with so much care, so much awareness, so much sensitivity, and that is lacking as a human being. So this continuous dichotomy, this uh, the cycle has been broken by human intervention continuously. Uh, so this was something, as I am talking to you, I'm feeling so emotional. I don't know, I mean, I might get deviated. So Vikram, just bring me back. Yeah. So every time it was like, whenever I was choreographing, I mean that section, that balance and harmony. So what is it, what we think, what we do, what we say, I think it is not in harmony. But if you see the if you see that closed loop cycle, it is so much, the tune, the rhythm, it is so much in harmony. So it was every time coming in between. So that artist, that human being, so that came. I mean, you I think all of you have seen, what I have tried to express. I think I have said it all in that video. And at the end, you must have seen that wall. So for me, that was nature is saying thus far and no farther. That's all. Enough is enough. Uh, yeah.
Thanks, Debashree. I think that's
Yeah.
that gives us not just an idea of what you were playing with and what you were responding to, but also the kind of emotional roller coaster that it has obviously
Yeah,
sent
yeah,
you
yes,
on.
yes,
And
yes.
I think that is definitely something that this whole project that Arts Forward is offering us, is definitely something that they want us to go through different levels of thinking, different levels of just being provoked into pausing our lives and asking ourselves questions. Whether we create a video from it or not is not the point, but the fact that we should be really asking ourselves some really difficult questions about how we live our lives, how we justify what we do to ourselves, let alone anyone else. So on that note, I'd like Avantika to also respond to the same question. How did you respond to the idea? What were your challenges? What are the central ideas in terms of both content and form in your work? Avantika.
Right. Can you hear me? Okay. So other than sort of just playing with the idea of perspectives and where the gaze falls, my movement exploration basically sort of emerged from some of the fundamental questions and themes that are pertinent to sustainability, to the circular loop, to the closed loop, to circular economy. And I think one of the questions that I sort of deep dived into is also the title of this evening, which is where do we come from and where do we go? And it was that sort of really made me reflect on mindless consumption, and also whether we, question the life cycle of resources and objects that we use on a daily basis. And in terms of sort of connecting that to physicality, I started exploring this idea of movement coming from the spine and the core, and how that becomes a circular loop. So where does how it gets initiated from the spine and goes right back to the spine. Also, I was sort of working with this idea of human intervention in nature, and how to a very, very big degree our hands are complicit in this destruction of the rhythm and natural cycle that the environment has. Also sort of looking at ideas of circularity and loop, and sort of just engaging with this notion of transference, and also staying rooted and therefore committed to certain choices that we make that are difficult but are important in the long run. So those were sort of the four big themes that I was working with and engaging with through these 4 short videos. Just to talk about challenges, I think artistic process is always collaborative in nature, and specifically to do this one was a lonely process, because suddenly I was the videographer and editor and cinematographer, etc. But it did help me sort of to just engage a bit more deeply with the work. But I missed sort of just being able to have more conversations about it with collaborators. Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I think, something that we're all extremely aware of now. The fact that we're suddenly it's not just the stay at home or maintain distance, it's just the being cut off from the physical presence of others. We have the virtual presence as we're sharing now, but to be cut off from the physical presence and physical energies of others is become such a strong absence. It's strange to say that. It sounds like, how can it be a strong absence, but it has become that. But I just like to sort of maybe Avantika, you can continue, because you were talking about choices, and you were talking about choices that you made in making this piece. But if we sort of pull back a little bit and say, okay, as dance artists that we are, what are the habits that we have which may contribute to the problems that we are creating, or may contribute to the fact that we are not following a closed loop cycle, and what are the ways that we can start reconsidering them. And yeah, so let's go with that first. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think, as makers, we are always, I think the first, I guess the biggest problem is budget. So as a maker, I am thinking of how can my costume or my set design or my light design fit in a budget? And therefore, what is the easiest choice to make versus what might be a slightly harder but more sustainable choice to make? So just going forward, just thinking of, can costumes be upcycled? How can set design be made in a way that is that can sort of give back, or that can be used time and again? What do we do with light design? Can we make our own lights? We did that for a work that I had made, and we just carried the lights everywhere we went, as opposed to hiring these big like Fresnels, etc. So I think it's also it is definitely a conscious choice. It's one that we have to take responsibility for, and also it's one where unless unless I don't make that decision to make the decision, it's not going to happen, because I will go with the easiest option and the cheapest option.
Debashree, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah. So, I was, while Avantika was saying, I was also thinking, about our space, my Guruji's space, that rehearsal space where we have 3 almiras, and we have all our costumes there. And, I was even, at least, for this one, I used my costume that was like we designed 20 years back. Vikram, this was from Bahudha. So, one has to think about minimizing. One has to think about whatever materials. I think we have so many materials. If we can, again, go back to those almiras and find out, there will be so many saris and, so many other materials we could explore and we could make. So we have to, start thinking about, again, reducing on that, reusing it, and the word is minimalism. We have to think about that. Yes.
And I think perhaps now is a good time to start. I mean, one of the things that Paramita, when she first proposed this to all of us, to all the audiences, and sent the word out, one of the things she was saying is that it's never a good time to talk about the environment, so let's talk about it now. And I think, Paramita, correct me if I'm wrong, but you chose to talk about it now because in this pandemic situation, because of safety issues, because of there is actually so much more waste being created, medical waste, home delivery waste, packaging waste, all these sort of things that are being created. And if we actually, yes, of course, there is a pandemic on and we have to look at health and safety and all that paramount, but we cannot be looking at health and safety as a narrow medical issue. We have to look at health, safety, and well-being. And well-being is a much larger issue, which is, spans time. And it's not about just these 2 years or 3 years that we will have to go through with the pandemic and with this virus. The virus is not going anywhere. We're just going to have to learn to live with it. But to also sort of bring into our consciousness the idea of well-being, not just of ourselves, but of the planet that we're calling home. And my last sort of question to both of you, and maybe this is a question that I could throw open to everyone actually, and you could just drop your answers in the chat. What is one simple step that you would like to take as an individual, whether for Debashree and Avantika, whether that's in your artistic lives or, outside your artistic lives, whatever, but something that you can implement immediately, a simple step that you can implement immediately to come one step closer to achieving a closed loop lifestyle?
Vikram, I've been working on this carbon footprints with my students in Brindar. So I have already started last month. So while I was working on it, again, those same questions popped up, and I told them, let's start. Let's take a very small step, like that one step we take out of so many steps we have to take in future. So that one step is, let's go to our neighborhood. Let's in your own apartment, let's go to each uh, family and ask them to stop using that single use plastic. That is the, I have already started this. I've already started this, and I have told, because I have to practice it first, and then I can, I have to practice it, and then only I can tell my students, and then only I can tell my students to speak to others. So uh, this is the first step, I think, to just stop using those single use plastics. And we can take containers, we can have the jute bags, we can have cotton bags, we can take it to bazaar, uh, we can have a pouch, where you're getting your eggs or whatever. So there are solutions, but first step is not to use that single use plastic. uh, so this is what I've already started, and I'll, yeah.
Avantika?
So I'm just going to share a little story. Well, not really a story, but a fact that I read when I was doing my research. And it was about this archaeologist who comes together with a team of 20 people, 20 other archaeologists from his team. And they basically are looking at landfills as an archaeological site. And they this was only a few years ago, and they start digging the landfills, this is in New York, and they go really, really deep in, and they find this absolutely perfect, like beautifully, wonderfully green bowl of guacamole. And next to that, there was a newspaper thrown. So they obviously knew that that trash had been thrown possibly by the same person on the same day. And the newspaper was dated 1963. So my first step is, well, not my first step, but what I'm actively going to now sort of work towards is waste segregation in my home, because I think that is one of the sort of biggest contributors to just destruction of the environment, really.
And Vikram, Paramita, I just want to add one thing. This comfort word is a dangerous thing, comfort. So we have to face the what you call that? What is adversities? That makes you uncomfortable. We've been enjoying the fruits, what our forefathers. I'm sitting under this fan. I have my AC. So we are so comfortable. It's so convenient for all of us. So we have to, that word comfort, it's very, very dangerous. So we have to, I think, address that, each one of us. What is it? Yeah.
I'm actually feeling very good, because these words that are being used are words that I use, or other people who've been working in this field for a bit use. And now I'm hearing these words from you. You would have probably just started your journey, but because you so intensely engaged with it through art, through your dance, probably you felt it all the more deeper. And just this morning, when we were doing a session with Dia and Anubhav, which we play tomorrow, one thing that was a takeaway from the session is that till you feel it for yourself, that you are actually engaging with a living planet, that the earth that you're standing on is actually breathing. It might seem very philosophical and poetic, but it is practically true that when you actually believe and feel that you are standing on a breathing planet, and you feel it once, you cannot come back from it. That is it. That's the change. That's the shift that happens once, and it's happened. And then your journey can be imperfect. Not everything will happen in the same moment. You can't give up plastic today. You can't do 100%, waste composting tomorrow. But you will start the journey. And we see, because we work with children of all ages, and we've been doing this across schools for many years now, all the questions the children, the questions they ask are the questions that we should be asking ourselves, and they get it so easily. So one of the first questions that I always ask in any of these workshops is, when was the first toothbrush made? And they will throw wild guesses, 15, 20, 18 something. And then when I say the year, and then I ask them, but where is this first toothbrush now? They will wonder and scratch their heads. And then I say, it's somewhere around. It's in some garbage dump somewhere. And that immediately starts them thinking that, oh my God, I didn't think about this. So it's just something very tiny. And I know we don't have time, so I'm going to quickly just say one thing, that cost is a large point. Cost will come back. Convenience and cost are words that will keep coming back. A lot of people have shifted to plastic, be it the sweet shops where everything was earthenware, to a lot of things. They've shifted to plastic because it's just very convenient. B, it's just very cheap. And no natural material can actually beat it at this moment, if you think of it right now. But if you think of it as something that you switch and then you continue doing it, say the shalpata, little bowls that we have our fuchka in, it's something as basic as that. If you go to a fuchka wala, which is a standard thing in Kolkata, you will see they've moved to tiny plastic bowls. And if you ask them why, they say, "Eta to shosta, it's far more, it's cheaper, because to get a well-made shalpata bowl and to sauce it is trouble. So access is not there, and for sure there is cost." So till a larger part of the population, and this was a discussion we were having last night with the Sienna team, as to how do we make food packaging sustainable, till a larger part of the population starts researching and opting for non-plastic methods, only when you start looking for non-plastic methods will non-plastic methods sell. Non-plastic methods don't sell, they are there, but they don't sell because people don't look for them. So we need to have larger awareness of trying to search for these options. So often searching for options will lead these shopkeepers to make more and sell more. Because we only know plastic, we look for plastic, it's more possible and accessible, of course. And like one of our audience members, Shumallo, just says the change is political. Of course, plastic is a large industry. And believe me, because we've been working in this field, the laws are in place. The laws in terms of electronic waste and plastic and the closed loops are all there. It's just that industry bodies cannot put them to action because there are too many loopholes, too much corruption, too many barriers. That wall that you were putting up now, Debashree, for me, that's a wall, that's a barrier. Every time you want to make a positive choice, there is a barrier in front of you that you need to work on. And I think as artists, no matter how difficult it is, artists are thinking on their feet all the time. I think that is why artists can really lead this change. And at every point, artists can be leaders in very tiny ways. I remember watching Cheluvi, which is that film by Girish Karnad, where there is a woman who turns into a flowering, fruit-bearing tree. And I was very tiny at that time. And that image hasn't left me, you see, that I'm a woman and I'm a tree. So that I'm a female body and I'm a fruit-bearing body, I'm a flower-bearing body, I'm a tree, and therefore a tree is precious. So I think art really does this. Art gives us these alternative images that can stick to you and make things happen. So thank you as artists for engaging. I threw a wild idea, I was like, let's do this, let's throw it, and let's see where it goes. So thank you, everyone. Sorry I took so much time.
Wonderful initiative, Paramita. Wonderful. God bless you.
Move to the audience questions.
There are lots of comments in the audience, and I think maybe, I don't know if there is a question, but people have been talking about politics, and Srijani has said it's a whole capitalist structure. And these larger structures are something we really need to be aware of, that it's not just about convenience and cost, but the convenience and cost has come about because a certain structure is in place, or has been in place has been built over, so many decades. And how does, it's only when we start picking apart that structure in small ways that these other alternatives can find a foothold to exist. And I agree with Paramita entirely that artists can be a large part of leading the change, especially I think in a country like India, where we are so resource starved anyway, that for us, what is convenience, what is cheap, we're anyway in a hole. So uh, we actually have more options of what we choose to take out of that hole, because the difference between we're always constantly having to do jugaad. So even if we switch in our heads that let's do jugaad, which is a little more um, closed loop or little more sustainable, rather than do jugaad from plastic and nylon, that's a huge shift. Just imagine if the huge community of artists that we have, if we made that small shift, that would be so great. I just want to share one last thing with you. There is another project going on right now, and it's actually, if you look, there are so many arts and environment discussions happening across the world right now. And one began on the 10th of June with at Swansea University in Wales. And it was a conversation with Margaret Atwood. That was the first thing. And of course, she is an author, but also a climate activist. And she was talking, she had written a piece um, which was projecting into this sort of dystopian future. And she talks about living in a dome and there not being any, what's for dinner, or is it going to be bean sprouts? So, it's a very tongue-in-cheek, hard-hitting, that's her style. And then she talks about that you look outside the dome and you can see the sun rise over the raw sand and rocks and pass over the raw sand and rocks and set over the raw sand and rocks, and the colors are absolutely beautiful. So there's this really ironic, hard-hitting humor. And then she ends with, you don't like this? You don't like this future that I'm describing? That's fine. You can order another one. And that order another one, she says it again with with a great sardonic tone. And are we going to order another one which is even worse than that, or are we going to order another one which actually takes us completely in a different direction? And I think with today's session, perhaps with the provocations that both Debashree and Avantika have given us, we can start thinking about these alternatives. I'm just going to paste the event link. It's a 10-day event that's happening in Swansea, but of course open across the world now. That's one of the advantages of living in the digital age. And if people want to look it up, there's an event every day happening, and really, really very lovely, very creative things going on. So thank you very much to both the artists. Thank you for the audiences who've joined us. And I'll hand back to Paramita to close.
So before we close the loop for this evening, I would like to say a few words. When I started working on this campaign, I was not aware of many of the concepts, ideas, and approaches to sustainability. But being a part of this campaign, listening to experts and watching artistic responses like the ones we saw today has been eye-opening and thought-provoking for me. And I hope all of us here will be able to take something back with us from this experience, and maybe something somewhere will change in our methods and how we have been living. And that is exactly what we were hoping to do with this campaign. So on behalf of Arts Forward, I would like to thank Avantika and Debashree for bringing to life their interpretations of the closed loops. I would also like to thank Vikram and Pickle Factory for being our partners and making this discussion possible. And lastly, I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. And we hope to see you soon for our other events. Thank you and good evening.